Welcome back to the Grep News Podcast. I'm Bam Rather, and our show today is about how Donald Trump celebrated turning 80 by turning the White House lawn into a $60 million cage fight coliseum. Because apparently when you're the president, the people's house comes with a very different kind of party package. There's a sentence buried in the Justice Department's filing that I keep coming back to. Defending the event against a lawsuit from two Virginia residents who didn't want a cage fight in their backyard, the government's lawyers wrote that the plaintiffs could, quote, easily enough, simply avert their gazes for the weekend. Avert their gazes. From the south lawn of the White House. From a 92-foot, 600-ton steel structure called The Claw, looming over 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. From a 4,000-seat octagon visible from blocks away. The Department of Justice's official position in federal court was, look the other way. I want to sit with that, because it tells you exactly how this event was understood by the people staging it, not as something to be justified on the merits, as something to be endured. Here's what happened. On Flag Day, which is also the president's 80th birthday, the South Lawn hosted UFC Freedom 250, 7 fights, all-male card, headlined by a lightweight title bout. The first major professional sporting event ever held on the White House grounds. The first fully outdoor UFC event in the promotion's 33-year history. And according to a National Park Service court filing, it cost at least $60 million in public resources, with tens of thousands of labor hours spread across 7 federal agencies. The president says UFC paid for it. The Park Service's own filing says otherwise. 2 numbers, 2 sources, both inside the same government. Only one of them can be right. No reporting I found reconciles the gap, and that gap is the story worth cracking open. Let me walk you through how the event got legal cover. The National Park Service issued a rule last year exempting government-organized 250th anniversary commemorations from the normal restrictions on private use of national parks. The exemption was written for the country's semi-quincentennial. The administration invoked it here. The legal question the plaintiffs raised was simple. Is a Trump-originated, UFC-produced, crypto-sponsored, ticketed cage fight actually planned, organized, and executed by the government? A federal judge, an Obama appointee for what it's worth, denied the temporary restraining order on standing in public interest grounds. The fight went forward. The merits question, whether this qualifies as a government event, was never reached. The rule meant to mark 2.5 centuries of a republic ended up clearing the lawn for a birthday. Here's where I started pulling the timeline, because the sponsorship structure deserves attention. According to one report, UFC announced a last-minute headline sponsor, a crypto firm called World Liberty Financial. That firm is co-owned by the Trump family. It was founded with the president's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, and it's run by Witkoff's son. World Liberty Financial put up a $250,000 winner's bonus pool for the fighters. So, public grounds, public labor across 7 agencies, a $60 million taxpayer tab, and the headline sponsor writing the bonus check is a company the first family co-owns. Separately, the president's financial disclosures earlier this year show he purchased up to $50,000 of stock in TKO Group Holdings, UFC's parent company. That last detail is a single-source claim, and I want to flag it as such. But the source is his own disclosure. The audience deserves its own paragraph. Of the roughly 4,000 seats, and the attendance numbers vary across reports from 4,000 to 5,000, which no one has explained, about 1,200 were set aside for active duty service members. According to a Pentagon memo described in one outlet, those service members had to meet a waist-to-height ratio of no more than 0.55, pass their fitness scores, and be, quote, genuine UFC fans. They paid their own travel. The Department of Defense, in other words, curated a crowd of fit, fan-vetted troops to fill the stands behind the president on his birthday. This is the casting process for a network reality show applied to the United States military. That is a new template for using service members as stagecraft, and it is worth saying out loud. Now, the weekend itself. Ceremonial weigh-ins on the ellipse, motorcycle stunts on the lawn, a Dodge Ram doing a burnout. A heavyweight named Josh Hokett gave a viral weigh-in in which he explained on camera that he might have been drinking the night before because, in his words, I have a giant black man that wants to knock me out. That happened on the south lawn of the White House. The Lincoln Memorial hype event the night before got rained out. Joe Rogan, who calls UFC fights for a living, said on his own podcast that he didn't like it because, quote, they should be fighting indoors, always. When the color commentator is on the record saying your venue is wrong, that is not partisan criticism. That is a guy who knows the sport. Here's the juxtaposition I keep returning to. While construction crews were assembling a 600-ton steel claw over an octagon on the south lawn, another crew, about a mile away, was prying the president's name off the Kennedy Center because a court ruled the renaming had gone too far. One monument to him was being dismantled at the exact moment another was being built, for one night only, for his birthday. The first one got mentioned in passing in one Wire report. Nobody connected the two. I think they are the same story. The historical contrast is the one the Wire services did make. The previous president marked his 80th birthday with a private family brunch and was hounded out of his re-election bid over questions about his age and fitness. This president marked his 80th with a 4,000-seat cage fight coliseum and a flyover schedule that pushed the G7 summit back so he could attend the fight first and fly to France after. An April poll found that fewer than half of American adults believe he has the mental sharpness or physical health to serve effectively. His former White House physician calls his stamina exceptional. Both of those statements are on the record. They cannot both be the consensus. A classics professor at Cornell, asked to comment, used the phrase you knew was coming: bread and circuses. He's right, but I want to be precise about why. The Roman formulation wasn't about distraction in the abstract. It was about a state that had stopped governing and started performing. The Iran war is roughly 3 months old. Inflation is at its highest since 2023. The State Department, in the middle of all this, signed a memorandum of understanding with UFC, framing the promotion as, quote, the United Nations of Fighting. The Office of National Drug Control Policy held a ceremony honoring a heavyweight fighter for passing 75 clean drug tests. The official position of the United States government is that mixed martial arts is a diplomatic body, and that a man not failing drug tests is a drug policy achievement. These are the actions of a government that has decided the spectacle is the work. I want to note one perspective I could not find anywhere in the coverage. The roughly 1,200 service members who were measured, scored, and bussed in to stand behind the president, none of them appear to have been quoted on the record about the experience. Not one. The audience that the Pentagon assembled is the audience the press did not interview. I cannot tell you what they made of it. I can tell you that absence is itself a finding. So, return with me to that DOJ filing. Avert their gazes. The government's legal argument was that the people who live near the White House should simply not look. And I think that instruction, more than any single fact in this story, is the thing to hold on to. Because what it concedes, what it admits in federal court in writing, is that the event is something a reasonable person would want to look away from. Not celebrate, not attend, endure. Here's what I know now that I didn't a week ago. I know the Park Service itself put the public cost at over $60 million, while the president claimed UFC was footing the bill. I know the headline sponsor was a company the First family co-owns. I know the audience was curated by waist measurement. I know a federal court declined to reach the question of whether this was actually a government event. And I know the legal exemption that made it possible was written for the country's 250th birthday, not the president's 80th. The one thread worth watching is the money. Not the fight card, not the polling, not the optics, the funding flow. Who reimbursed whom? What World Liberty Financial actually paid? And whether any of it routes back to family entities. That is a document trail, and document trails surface eventually. When it does, we will find out whether the People's House hosted a national celebration or a private party billed to the public. Right now, the filing says 60 million. The president says 0. One of those numbers is wrong. Share this story to support investigative AI-powered news and learn more at grep.news.
Grep News. Thomas.